Emma Peterson arrived at the
Good
lobby of
afternoon.
Blackwood Industries
How
at
can I help you?
8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in early
afternoon.
September.
How can
She
I
had
help you?
deliberately chosen this time, early enough to appear eager, but not so early as to seem desperate. Everything about her appearance had been carefully calculated. Her navy blazer was 3 years old but well maintained. Her black trousers were pressed the night before and had a small stain on the left knee that she had tried unsuccessfully to remove. She wore black flats because heels made her nervous, and she couldn't afford to appear nervous. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her face look too angular, too plain. She wore no makeup except for a touch of lip balm. Comment where you are watching from right now before we go any further. If you are in the United States, type US. Watching from the United Kingdom, type UK. Australia, type AUS. Canada, type Canada. Norway, type Norway. Switzerland, type Switzerland. Denmark, type Denmark. Drop your country below because this story is going to take you somewhere you are completely not expecting, and we want to know you were here from the beginning. She was trying very hard to be invisible. The lobby was all glass and steel and minimalist design. Everything was expensive and cold. The receptionist sat behind a desk that looked like it cost more than Emma's car. She was perfectly put together. Blonde hair in perfect waves, makeup perfectly applied, nails perfectly manicured. Everything about her screamed competence and privilege. Emma clutched her portfolio more tightly and approached the desk. "I have a 9 a.m. appointment with Mr. Blackwood," Emma said quietly. "Emma Peterson." The receptionist looked up from her computer, and her eyes did a quick assessment of Emma in a way that felt intentionally dismissive. Emma had gotten used to these looks. She was invisible in the way that beautiful women in expensive clothes were visible. She was the type of woman that people looked through rather than at. "Name and time, please," the receptionist said, not finding Emma in the system immediately. "Emma Peterson, 9 o'clock. One moment." The receptionist typed something into her computer and then smiled in a way that suggested she had found an error. "You're in the system. Mr. Blackwood's office is on the 42nd floor. Take the elevator there, and his assistant will meet you." Emma had been through 4 interviews this week. The first was for a position at a mid-sized accounting firm. They had rejected her because they said she was overqualified but unmotivated. The second was at a non-profit that had decided to go with someone with more non-profit experience. The third was at a small business where the owner had made it clear that he preferred to hire women who were more outgoing and personable. The fourth had been at a boutique marketing firm where they had liked her but decided to hire internally. This was her 5th attempt, 5th chance, 5th opportunity to be rejected for reasons that always sounded professional but felt personal. She was 32 years old. She had been supporting her children as a single mother for the past 5 years. Her ex-husband had left when their son was born, unable to handle the responsibility of fatherhood. Emma had raised them alone, working as a contractor, freelancer, doing whatever she could to make ends meet. She had a degree in business administration. She had excellent references. She had the experience. What she didn't have was the presentation. What she didn't have was the polish. What she didn't have was the ability to make people forget that she came from nothing and had built herself up from there. The elevator ride took 90 seconds. Emma counted every one. The numbers lit up as she ascended. 20, 30, 40, 41. 42. When the doors slid open, she was standing in what could only be described as the executive suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows on all sides showed the city spread out below like a map of possibility. The reception area was pristine. White walls, black furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than Emma's annual salary. There was a single desk, and behind it sat a woman who looked like she had been designed by a high-end fashion magazine. "Emma Peterson?" the woman asked, looking up from her computer. She had the same assessing look as the receptionist downstairs, but this one was more efficient. She seemed to be taking inventory of Emma and quickly determining that there wasn't much inventory to take. "Yes," Emma said. She held her portfolio a little less tightly. "Mr. Blackwood is ready. Conference room B, 3rd door on your left." Emma nodded and walked down the corridor. Through glass walls, she could see people working with intense focus and purpose. Everyone was in expensive business clothes. Everyone looked confident. Everyone belonged here in a way that Emma had never quite managed to belong anywhere. The conference room was exactly what she expected, all glass and metal and minimalist design. The table was obsidian black. The chairs were modern and uncomfortable looking. At the head of the table sat a man who made Emma forget how to breathe. He was striking in a way that had nothing to do with conventional handsomeness. He was tall, 6'2" at least, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to catalogue everything they saw. His hair was dark, combed back from his face in a style that was expensive and precise. He wore a suit that cost more than Emma's car. He looked like someone who had never experienced a moment of doubt in his entire life. This was Julian Ashton Blackwood, the billionaire. The man whose company had revolutionized the real estate development industry, the man who had made his fortune in tech before moving into acquisition and development. He was 42 years old, which Emma knew because she had done her research. He was divorced. He had no children. He was known for being brilliant, ruthless, and utterly disconnected from his own humanity. He looked at Emma, and she saw something flicker across his face. It was so brief that she almost missed it. Was it disappointment? Relief? Resignation? It was gone too quickly to name. "Emma Peterson," he said. It was not a question but a statement. His voice was deep, and it carried the kind of authority that came from having always gotten exactly what he wanted. "Yes," Emma said. She remained standing, waiting for permission to sit. Some bosses preferred this. "Sit down," Julian said, and he gestured to the chair directly across from him. Emma sat carefully, placing her portfolio on the table in front of her. She folded her hands and waited. "Tell me why you're here," Julian said. It was an unusual opening question for an interview. "You're hiring for a personal assistant position," Emma said carefully. "I believe I'm qualified for the role. Why do you think you're qualified?" "I have 8 years of experience as an executive assistant. I've worked in demanding office environments. I have strong organizational skills, attention to detail, and the ability to manage complex schedules and competing demands." Julian leaned back in his chair. He was studying her in a way that made Emma feel like he was seeing through to something she couldn't quite articulate about herself. "Why have you had 4 jobs in 8 years?" he asked. Emma had prepared for this question. She had prepared for all of his questions. She had practiced her answers in the mirror, but something about the way he was looking at her made her want to tell the truth instead. "The first position didn't work out because the hours were demanding and my childcare arrangement fell through," she said. "The second position ended when the company downsized. The third position was a contract position that ended when the contract ended. The fourth position wasn't the right fit because I was working for someone who didn't respect their staff." "You have children," Julian said. It wasn't a question. 2, a daughter, age 8, and a son, age 7, and you're a single mother. "Yes. How is that working out for you?" Emma paused. This was getting into territory that wasn't typically covered in interviews. Questions about her personal life, her ability to manage her responsibilities as a parent while working full-time. She had been asked this question before by other interviewers, and it had always felt like a trap, like they were trying to determine whether she was actually stable enough to do the job, or whether her children would be a distraction. "It's working," Emma said finally. "My mother lives with us and helps with childcare. I'm responsible and reliable. My personal life doesn't affect my work performance." Julian stood up and walked to the window. Emma could see the back of his head, the line of his shoulders. He was very still, in a way that suggested he was thinking about something important. "The position I'm offering is personal assistant," he said without turning around. "You would manage my schedule, coordinate my calls, organize my meetings, handle travel arrangements, manage my correspondence. The hours are unpredictable. Some weeks you'd work 30 hours, other weeks you'd work 60. The demands are significant. I'm not an easy person to work for." "I understand," Emma said. "You would be working directly for me, which means you would be privy to aspects of my life and business that I don't share with anyone else. You would need to be completely discreet, completely trustworthy. You would need to understand that if you ever breach that trust, the consequences would be severe." "I can do that," Emma said. "Your salary would be $200,000 per year," Julian said. He was still looking out the window. "Plus health insurance, dental, vision, a 401k with a company match, and 6 weeks of paid time off annually. You would be required to sign a non-disclosure agreement and a confidentiality agreement. You would be required to make a 2-year commitment. If you break that commitment without cause, you would be responsible for reimbursing a portion of your salary." Emma's breath caught. $200,000. That was more than she had made in the past 3 years combined. That was stability. That was her daughter going to the school she wanted. That was her son's asthma medication being fully covered. That was a future that didn't involve constant financial anxiety. "That's a generous offer," Emma said carefully. "I'm aware," Julian said. He was still looking out the window. "The question is whether you can handle working for me. I need someone who can do the job well." someone who won't be intimidated by the money or the position, someone who shows up because they need to show up, not because they want something from me. I don't want anything from you except the opportunity to do my job well, Emma said. Julian finally turned around to face her. There's one more thing you should know, he said. His voice was quieter now, more personal. I've been burned by people I trusted. Badly. I have some trust issues. Some people would say I have significant psychological issues related to my ability to form healthy relationships. I mention this because it might affect your experience working for me. I can be cold, I can be distant, I can be difficult, but I'm honest about what I am, and I believe that's worth something. Emma appreciated this. Most people didn't come with a disclaimer. Most people pretended to be better than they actually were. I think everyone has been hurt, Emma said, and I think everyone carries that hurt with them in some way. That doesn't make you broken, it just makes you human. Julian's expression shifted. Something flickered across his face. Was it hope? Recognition? It was gone too quickly to name. You're hired, Julian said. You start Monday. Welcome to Blackwood Industries, Emma. He extended his hand across the table. Emma stood and shook it. His handshake was firm, professional, and somehow infinitely sad. Emma's first week working for Julian Blackwood was a blur of learning systems and routines and expectations. Monday, he had back-to-back meetings from 6 in the morning until midnight. Emma arrived at 5:30 to prepare his office and make sure everything was organized. She had created a system the previous Friday, mapping out his schedule and ensuring that she understood the flow of his day. His first meeting was with the real estate development team. They came in with architectural drawings and financial projections. Julian reviewed everything quickly, asking pointed questions that suggested he had already done his own research. His questions were sharp, his comments were precise, his expectations were clear. The team left looking either exhilarated or devastated, depending on their role in the project. The second meeting was with his legal team. They discussed an acquisition he was considering. The conversation was technical and complex. Emma had been tasked with having the files ready before he arrived, and she had organized them in the exact order he seemed to prefer, by date, then by relevance, then by importance. He glanced at them and nodded at her without saying anything. By noon, she had arranged lunch from a restaurant 3 blocks away that served exactly what he had requested. Grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, no salt, lemon on the side. He ate it at his desk while on a conference call. Emma had learned that his lunch break was not actually a break. It was just eating while working. The afternoon was filled with more meetings. A presentation about a new market the company was considering entering. A discussion with the finance team about quarterly earnings. A call with a potential investor who wanted to be part of a development project. Throughout all of it, Emma managed his time, brought him coffee before he asked for it, and made sure he had everything he needed before he knew he needed it. By 7 in the evening, Emma could see that Julian was tired. He was running on coffee and momentum. His shoulders had dropped. His voice had taken on an edge of frustration. Final meeting of the day was with someone important. She could tell by the way the executive team was conducting themselves. This is Richard Harmon, Julian said, introducing the man who walked into the conference room. Emma hadn't seen this name on the schedule, but she had learned that some meetings weren't on the official schedule. He's here to discuss a potential acquisition. Richard Harmon was approximately Julian's age, with grey hair and the kind of face that suggested a life lived well. He smiled warmly at Julian, and Emma saw something shift in Julian's expression. The warmth drained from his face, his jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists. Julian, Richard said, extending his hand. Good to see you, it's been a long time. Julian did not shake his hand. What are you doing here? His voice was cold in a way that Emma hadn't heard from him before. I came to discuss a partnership, Richard said. His smile faltered slightly. I thought perhaps we could work together on the Harrison development. Your company has resources and expertise that... No, Julian said. We're done here. He stood, and everyone understood that the meeting was over. Richard looked shocked, then angry. You can't still be holding a grudge about something that happened 15 years ago, Richard said. Get out, Julian said quietly, and don't ever contact my office again. Richard left, and the room was silent. Emma could see that Julian was shaking slightly. She had only worked for him for 1 day, but she recognized the signs of something deeply wrong. The remaining meetings were cancelled. Julian dismissed the team and closed himself in his office. Emma wanted to ask if he was okay, but she knew better. She had only worked for him for 1 day, and boundaries were important. Instead, she made sure his office was organized. She prepared his files for the next day. She left a bottle of water on his desk and a folder with the next day's schedule clearly outlined. When she left at midnight, Julian was still in his office, staring out the window at the city below. Tuesday was better. The tone was lighter. Julian seemed to have recovered from whatever had happened with Richard Harmon. He didn't mention it, and Emma didn't ask. She learned his preferences. He took his coffee black, no sugar. He preferred emails to phone calls, but would call if something was urgent. He read everything that came to him, which meant Emma had to be impeccable with her work. She couldn't send him anything that wasn't perfect. He had a photographic memory, which meant that he would notice if she sent him a document that contradicted something he had read weeks earlier. She learned his rhythms. He was most focused in the early morning, which meant she scheduled his most important meetings from 8 to 11. He was tired by afternoon, which meant she scheduled the easier meetings for after lunch. He was a workaholic, which meant she had to force him to take breaks by blocking off time on his calendar that she labeled administrative time, but was actually just time for him to breathe and eat and remember that he was human. By the end of the first week, she had settled into a routine that made the chaos manageable. Wednesday evening, Julian called her into his office just as she was about to leave. "The file for the Morrison acquisition," he said. "I need it recompiled. The documents are out of order." Emma looked at the file. She had arranged it carefully, in the exact order she thought made sense. But she could see that Julian had reorganized it in his mind, and the order he was envisioning was different from the order she had created. "I'll have it done first thing tomorrow," she said. "No," Julian said. "Do it tonight. I want to review it before my 8 o'clock meeting." Emma felt a flash of frustration. She had been about to pick up her children from her mother's apartment. She had promised them that she would be home by 6 o'clock. It was already 5:45 p.m., but she said, "Of course, I'll have it ready before your meeting." She called her mother and explained that she would be late. Her mother, who had raised Emma alone as well, understood. Her daughter was upset. She had wanted to show Emma a drawing she had made at school. Emma apologized and promised to see it when she got home. She stayed in the office until 11 p.m., reorganizing the Morrison file in the order that Julian wanted. She analyzed the documents and understood what he was looking for. She created a summary of the key points so he wouldn't have to read everything from scratch. She cross-referenced documents and noted inconsistencies. When she had finished, she left the file on his desk with a note explaining the reorganization. She left at 11:30 p.m. and drove home in the darkness, feeling guilty about missing bedtime with her children. The next morning, she arrived at 5:30 a.m. as usual. Julian was already in his office. The Morrison file was on his desk, completely reorganized. "You reorganized it again," Emma said. "You reorganized it well," Julian said, and there was something in his voice that suggested he had realized something important. "You understood what I was looking for, but I needed to see it in my own order, my own structure. Does that make sense?" "Yes," Emma said. "Everyone thinks differently. Most people don't stay up until midnight to reorganize a file that isn't their responsibility," Julian said. "Most people would just do the job and move on. Most people don't have 2 children waiting for them at home," Emma said, and she didn't mean it as a criticism, but she could see that he took it that way. His face closed off slightly. "I appreciate your effort," he said formally. "Your work was excellent. I'm sorry that I required you to stay late." "It's fine," Emma said, and she meant it. "It's part of the job. My mother helped with my children. Everything is fine," but something had shifted in their interaction. Emma had shown him that she had a life outside of his office. She had shown him that she had priorities beyond his needs. She wondered if that would affect his opinion of her. As it turned out, it didn't. It just made him more conscious of her time. He still required her to stay late occasionally, but he was apologetic about it. He started leaving at 6 p.m. on Fridays so that she could have her weekends. He stopped scheduling meetings during what he began to understand were her peak stress times: Tuesday evening pickup, Wednesday after-school programs, Sunday evening preparations for the week. It was the small ways that he was paying attention that made Emma realize she needed to be careful. By the end of the first month, Emma had developed a routine that made sense. She arrived at 5:30 a.m. and left between 5:30 p.m. and 7 p.m., depending on Julian's schedule. She managed his calendar, his correspondence, his meetings. She coordinated his travel and made sure he had everything he needed before he knew he needed it. But she also began to notice things that went beyond the scope of her job. She noticed that he looked at a framed photograph on his desk only when he thought no one was watching. It showed a woman who looked like him, his sister, perhaps. The woman was beautiful in a way that suggested she had the kind of confidence that only came from being loved. The photo was old, judging by the style and the condition. It looked like it had been taken 20 years ago. Julian would look at this photograph, and his jaw would tighten. Then he would turn it face down, as though seeing it pained him. She noticed that he flinched slightly when people touched him unexpectedly. She learned to announce herself when approaching his desk, so she wouldn't startle him. She learned to maintain a professional distance. She learned not to touch him, even in the way that other people touched each other. She noticed that his hands shook slightly when he was tired, and he was always tired. She started making sure his coffee was ready before his most demanding meetings. She started tracking his water intake and leaving bottles on his desk. She started blocking off times on his calendar that he could use for meals, and she began placing nutritious food on his desk during those times. Some days he ate it, some days he ignored it, but the gesture mattered, she thought. The gesture showed that someone was paying attention. He noticed her attention. She could see it in the way he would look at the coffee she had prepared, perfectly made, waiting for him in exactly the temperature he preferred. She could see it in the small pause before he would say thank you. A genuine thank you, not a command or a dismissal, but an actual acknowledgement of her effort. 3 months into the job, Emma was called into Julian's office for what she thought was a routine meeting about his upcoming schedule. Instead, she found him sitting behind his desk with a stack of files in front of him. "I need you to travel with me," he said. "A week in New York. Back-to-back meetings. A major acquisition I'm overseeing. I need you there to manage everything." Emma had expected this eventually. Large acquisitions required extensive coordination. "Of course," she said. "When?" 2 weeks from Monday. 1 week. "I'll need you to arrange everything. Flights, hotels, rental car, restaurant reservations for business dinners. I'll send you a tentative schedule. I'll have everything arranged by the end of the week," Emma said. "Thank you," Julian said, and there was something in his expression that suggested he was grateful, not just for her agreement to travel, but for the way she had accepted without hesitation, without asking about her children or her mother, or what she would need to arrange on her end. Emma went home that night and called her mother. "I have to travel for work," she said. "A week in New York, 2 weeks from Monday." Her mother, who was 68 years old and had worked her entire life, understood. "Go," she said. "I'll take care of the children. This is your career, Emma. You need to build this." Emma had been with Julian for 3 months. In that time, she had proven herself to be reliable, competent, and trustworthy. She had learned his preferences and his rhythms. She had learned how to anticipate his needs. She had learned not to take his moods personally. What she hadn't learned was that she was falling in love with him. It wasn't a conscious realization. It was more like a slow seeping, a gradual infiltration of her thoughts and her heart. She noticed it first in the small things. The way she started caring about her appearance in ways that had nothing to do with professionalism. The way she started wearing clothes that made her feel confident instead of clothes that made her feel invisible. The way she started wearing her hair down more often, even though she knew it made her look less professional. The second sign was that work was becoming more than work. She found herself thinking about Julian constantly, not in a professional capacity, but in every other way. She thought about what would make him happy. She thought about the sadness in his expression when he looked at that photograph. She thought about the fact that he had no one. She started leaving him handwritten notes on things she noticed he should do for himself. "You need to see your dentist. I can schedule the appointment. You mentioned wanting to read that book. I ordered it for you. Your suit needs tailoring in the shoulders. I have a tailor I trust." He never acknowledged these notes explicitly, but she could see that he acted on them. He went to the dentist. He started reading the book. He took his suit to the tailor. The third sign was that she was terrified, because Julian was still a mystery in many ways. He was warm with her in small moments, but he maintained distance. He never crossed the line from professional to personal. He never gave her any indication that what she was feeling was reciprocated, and she was his employee. That mattered. That was important. It changed the power dynamic in ways that she couldn't ignore. So Emma kept her love hidden, even as it grew stronger, even as it began to affect every decision she made about her appearance and her behavior and her life. The trip to New York was everything Emma had expected it to be, and nothing like she had expected it to be. She had arranged the logistics with her usual precision, first-class flights for both of them, a suite at the Plaza Hotel with connecting rooms so she could work in her space while being available to him, a rental car with a driver who was reliable and discreet, restaurant reservations at the restaurants Julian favored. All of his meetings were scheduled with time for him to prepare, time to eat, time to breathe. But what she hadn't anticipated was how close they would be for an entire week without the buffer of other people. The first morning in New York, Julian had a breakfast meeting with the board of directors of the company he was acquiring. Emma had arranged for everything to be perfect. The restaurant had his preferred table. His coffee was prepared exactly how he liked it. The documentation he needed was organized and ready. After the meeting, he found her in the car waiting for him. "You didn't attend the breakfast," he said. "I thought it would be better if I waited," Emma said. "I didn't want to seem like I was there to monitor you." "I wanted you there," Julian said, and there was something in his tone that suggested he meant something more than just the professional need for her to manage his schedule. So the next meeting she attended, she sat slightly to the side, close enough to be available but not so close as to seem intrusive. She took notes, she managed his documents, she did the job she was supposed to do, but Julian seemed more relaxed with her in the room. His shoulders were less tense, he was less formal. When he made a decision that the board didn't expect, he glanced at her as though to check that she approved. By the third day in New York, Emma realized that she was not just his assistant, she was his anchor. He relied on her presence to stay grounded. He looked for her in rooms full of people. He would seek her out after difficult meetings and stand next to her without speaking, just to have her near him. On the fourth evening, the acquisition was finalized. It was a massive deal. Billions of dollars, hundreds of jobs, a transformation of a portion of Manhattan. Julian had fought for months to make it happen, and today it was done. He called her into his suite at 9 p.m. "We're celebrating," he said. "You're getting dressed and we're going out." "I don't have anything appropriate for," Emma started, but Julian cut her off. "I had something sent to your room. Everything should fit. Be ready at 9:30. Emma went to her room and found a dress hanging on the closet door. It was beautiful, a simple black dress that was elegant without being ostentatious. There were shoes as well, and they fit perfectly. There was makeup and a note that said, "You deserve to celebrate too." When Emma met Julian in the hallway, he stopped walking. He looked at her in a way that made her feel suddenly less invisible. "You're beautiful," he said. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wasn't used to being told she was beautiful. She was competent, she was reliable, she was invisible. But beautiful, that was something she had never thought of herself as being. "Thank you," she said quietly. He took her to a restaurant that was not in the guidebooks. It was small and intimate, with dim lighting and waiters who seemed to know him personally. They served French cuisine, and Julian ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. But somehow, he knew. He ordered dishes that he had overheard her mention she enjoyed. He ordered a wine that she had once said smelled interesting. Over dinner, he told her about the acquisition. Not in the professional, clinical way he had explained it to the board, but in the personal way that suggested he was sharing something that mattered to him. "I've been trying to buy that company for 3 years, he said. "Richard Harmon, the CEO, he was someone I once trusted. We were colleagues. I learned a lot from him. And then he betrayed me in a way that I didn't think I would recover from." Emma listened without interrupting. "When I found out that he was selling the company, I fought to be the one to buy it. Not because the company is valuable, it is, but that's not the real reason. I wanted to buy it because I wanted to prove that I was stronger than he was, that I had won." He paused and took a sip of wine. "But today, when the deal closed, I didn't feel like I had won. I felt like I had just spent 3 years being angry, 3 years being consumed by the need for revenge. And in the end, the only person I hurt was myself." "What are you going to do now?" Emma asked. "I'm going to try to let it go," Julian said. "I'm going to try to focus on what I can do with this company that is good. I'm going to try to be the kind of person that you seem to think I am." Emma felt her heart clench. "I think you're already that person," she said. "You just don't believe it yet." Julian looked at her across the table, and for a moment Emma thought he might reach across and take her hand. She thought he might say something that would acknowledge what was happening between them. She thought he might cross the line that had been carefully maintained for 3 months. Instead, he signaled for the check. "It's late," he said. "We should get back to the hotel. We have an early flight tomorrow." But something had changed between them. Emma could feel it, like a door opening just slightly in a wall that had been carefully sealed. She had seen inside. She had seen the person underneath the power and the money and the armor, and she was falling further in love with him. The flight back to the city was quiet. Julian slept most of the way, his head resting against the window. Emma sat next to him and tried not to think about what it meant that he could sleep so peacefully next to her. When they landed, he turned to her and said, "Thank you for coming to New York." You made that week better than it would have been. That's my job, Emma said. It's more than your job, Julian said, and he meant it. 6 months into her employment, Emma knew that she was in love with Julian Blackwood in a way that was becoming impossible to hide. The first sign was that she started caring about her appearance in ways that went beyond professionalism. She noticed which colors made Julian look at her longer than necessary. She discovered that if she wore blue, he would linger on her face when he was tired. She wore red once, and he asked her if she was well, as though the change in her appearance required explanation. She started wearing the blazer that actually fit her properly, instead of the ill-fitting one she had been using as a shield. She started leaving her hair down more often, even though she knew it made her look less professional and more vulnerable. She started wearing perfume, not something expensive or showy, but something subtle that Julian noticed. She could tell because he would pause slightly when she was near him, as though he was catching something he hadn't expected. The second sign was that work was becoming less about work, and more about finding ways to spend time near him. She volunteered for tasks that weren't technically her job. She stayed late on days when she didn't need to. She invented reasons to be in his office, to see him, to exist in the same space. She brought him lunch from the restaurant near his office that she had overheard him mention once. She rearranged his office to reduce the glare from the windows because she noticed he rubbed his eyes frequently during afternoon meetings. She researched companies that he was interested in acquiring and created summary documents that saved him hours of work. She blocked off an hour on his calendar each day that she labeled administrative time, but was actually just time for him to breathe, to eat, to remember that he was human. He never asked about these extra efforts, but she could see the appreciation in his face when he found a lunch on his desk that he hadn't asked for. She could see the relief in his expression when he realized that the windows had been adjusted to reduce the glare. She could see him slow down when he realized that she had created a space for him to rest. The third sign was that she was terrified, because Julian was still a mystery in many ways. He was warm with her in small moments, but he maintained distance. He still had not crossed the line from professional to personal. The most contact they had were moments when she passed him a file and their hands would touch, and she could see him notice it. She was his employee. That mattered. That was important. She had read the employee handbook multiple times. Relationships between supervisors and subordinates were explicitly discouraged, and her children. She couldn't forget about her children. They had already experienced one abandonment. They couldn't handle another person entering their life, only to disappear when things got complicated. So Emma kept her love hidden, even as it grew stronger, even as it began to affect every decision she made. 6 months in, something shifted. Julian had been working on a massive acquisition, a company that was fighting him at every turn. The CEO was a man named Richard Harmon, the same man who had betrayed him years ago. Emma still didn't fully understand the nature of the betrayal, but she could see that it had marked Julian in ways that were profound and lasting. For 3 months, the acquisition was a battle. Julian was tense constantly, his jaw locked, his eyes holding a coldness that Emma had never seen directed at anyone but himself. He worked 18-hour days. He barely slept. He forgot to eat even when Emma reminded him. Emma watched him slowly come apart and couldn't do anything but witness it. She made sure his coffee was always ready. She made sure he had water and food and rest, or at least the opportunity for rest. She organized his documents and anticipated his questions. She stayed late into the night and arrived early in the morning, just to be available if he needed something. It wasn't enough. Nothing was enough to ease the pain he was carrying. Then came the day when everything changed. Julian came to his office at 6 a.m. and found Emma already there, preparing for the day. She had dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her shirt. She had stayed so late the previous night that she had fallen asleep at her desk. "Emma," Julian said, and his voice was sharp with something like concern. "Have you been here all night?" Emma jerked awake and looked at her watch. "No," she said. "I left at midnight. I came back at 5:30. "Go home," Julian said. "Take the day off. Spend time with your children." "The Harmon documents," Emma started. "Can wait," Julian said. "I need you to go home. I need you to remember that you have a life outside of this office. I need you to be okay." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. She had been holding everything together so carefully, and Julian's kindness was threatening to undo all of it. "I can't," she said. "If I leave, things will fall apart." "No," Julian said. "They won't. You've trained me well enough to manage without you for one day." But that wasn't true, and they both knew it. Julian couldn't manage without her. He relied on her presence to stay grounded. He needed her there to organize the chaos of his mind. "Then I'll stay," Emma said. Julian looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Come with me." He led her out of the office, down the elevator, and into his car. He drove her home in silence. When they arrived at her apartment, he turned to her and said, "Take care of yourself. I'll see you tomorrow." Emma went inside and collapsed into bed. She slept for 14 hours straight, and when she woke up, there was a text message from Julian that said, "Thank you for everything. I don't know what I would do without you." She didn't respond. She was afraid of what she might say. 9 months into her employment, something shifted in the acquisition. Harmon's board of directors had decided to walk away from the deal. They had come to an agreement with another buyer who offered less money but also offered certainty. They were tired of the fight with Julian. Julian came to his office one evening at midnight and found Emma still working, reviewing documents for the next day. "The acquisition is over," he said without preamble. Emma looked up. "What happened?" "Harmon won," Julian said flatly. "He convinced the board to walk away. I have 3 hours to decide whether to fight or accept defeat." Emma could see the war happening inside him, the anger, the disappointment, the hunger for revenge. "What do you want to do?" she asked carefully. Julian sat down across from her. "I want to destroy him," he said quietly. "I want to take everything from him the way he took everything from me. I want him to feel what I felt when he betrayed me." Emma wanted to counsel him against this. She wanted to give him the advice that a professional assistant would give, but she could see the pain underneath the anger, and she couldn't bring herself to do that. "Then do it," she said instead. Julian looked shocked. "You're supposed to talk me out of this. You're supposed to be the voice of reason." "Why?" Emma asked. "Because it's what a good assistant does? I'm not going to do that. You're in pain, Julian, and I'm not going to pretend I don't see it. If destroying Harmon is what you need to do, then do it." "It won't help," Julian said. His voice was barely audible. "Revenge never does. It just creates more damage, more hurt, more reasons for people to hurt each other." "Then what will help?" Emma asked. Julian was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was stripped of all pretense. "I don't know. I've been angry for so long that I don't remember what it feels like to be anything else. I've been trying to prove that I'm stronger than everyone who hurt me, that I'm better than everyone who betrayed me, and somewhere along the way, I just became the thing I was fighting against." Emma stood and walked around the desk. She took his hand and Julian didn't pull away. His hand was warm and strong and trembling slightly. "Then feel this instead," she said. "Feel that someone cares about you, that someone sees you, the real you, not the billionaire or the powerful man or the person who was betrayed. Just you, Julian, who you are when no one is watching." Julian looked down at their joined hands as though he couldn't quite believe the contact was real. "You shouldn't," he said softly. "You should hate me. I'm not a good person, Emma. I use people. I manipulate situations. You're lonely," Emma said, cutting him off, "and you've been hurt, but you're also kind, even when you try to hide it. You're brilliant. You're strong. You're worth knowing, Julian. You're worth caring about." Julian's hand tightened around hers. He stood and pulled her up, and for a moment, Emma thought he might kiss her. She thought he might finally break through the barrier that had been keeping them separate. Instead, he let go and turned away. "You need to go home," he said. His voice was controlled again, distant again. "It's late. Your mother will be worried." "Julian," Emma started. "Please, Emma, just go. I need to be alone." So she went home. And the next morning, she arrived at the office to find that Julian had made a decision. He was walking away from the acquisition. He had sent a letter to Harmon's board, withdrawing his bid. He had made a public statement saying that he was choosing to move forward in a different direction. He had donated the resources that would have been spent on the acquisition to a charitable foundation that helped people who had been financially devastated by corporate fraud and corporate manipulation. It was a symbolic gesture. It was beautiful. It was completely in character with who Emma knew Julian actually was underneath the anger and the armor. But he was distant with her after that, professional, polite. He had retreated back behind the walls he had carefully constructed. Emma realized that he was protecting himself, that her declaration had scared him, that he didn't know how to handle someone who cared about him without agenda or expectation. So she did what she had learned to do. She gave him space. She maintained her professionalism. She showed up and did her job well and didn't ask for anything more. And she watched him slowly come back to life. A year into her employment, Emma was called into Julian's office for what she thought was a routine update on his schedule. Instead, she found him sitting behind his desk with a thick file in front of him. His face was unreadable, and Emma felt her heart rate spike. Had she done something wrong? Had she been discovered in some way? "Sit down," he said. Emma sat in the chair across from his desk. She had sat in this chair hundreds of times. It had become familiar, comfortable, but today it felt like she was in an interrogation room. Julian opened the file. Inside were photographs. Emma recognized them immediately. They were photographs of her, photographs taken without her knowledge. She was leaving her apartment with her children. She was at the park with them. She was at her daughter's school. She was at her second job tutoring high school students. Photographs of her life, her private life, her family. Emma felt sick. "What is this?" she asked, and her voice sounded small and frightened. "I hired a private investigator," Julian said flatly. "6 months ago. I had them follow you, photograph you, compile everything about your life outside of work." Emma stood abruptly. She had been caught. It was over. Everything was over. "Why would you do that?" she asked, and her voice was shaking with anger and fear. "Because I needed to know if you were real," Julian said. He leaned back in his chair, his expression cold. "I needed to know if you were actually the person you seemed to be, or if you were some incredibly elaborate con. If you were performing a version of yourself designed to manipulate me." "Julian, I would never," Emma started, but he cut her off. "I know," he said. His tone was harsh, clinical. "I know that now. I've read the reports. Every single detail of your life checks out. You're exactly who you claim to be. A single mother working 2 jobs to support her children. A woman with integrity and kindness and genuine decency. Someone who doesn't want anything from me except a paycheck and stability." Emma felt anger rise in her. How dare he? How dare he investigate her without her consent? How dare he violate her privacy in such a fundamental way? "I don't understand," she said carefully. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm trying to tell you that I've been protecting myself by investigating you," Julian said. He stood and walked to the window. "By trying to prove that you would eventually disappoint me, that you would eventually reveal yourself to be like everyone else, like Harmon, like my ex-wife, like every person I've ever trusted who turned out to be motivated by greed or power or self-interest." He turned back to face her. "I'm trying to tell you that I've been testing you without your knowledge, testing whether you were real, whether your kindness was genuine, whether you actually cared, or if you were just very good at performing care." "And?" Emma asked quietly. "And you passed every test," Julian said. "You were kind when I was cruel. You were patient when I was cold. You cared about my well-being without asking for anything in return. You saw the worst of me and stayed anyway." He paused, and Emma could see that this was difficult for him. "But that's not fair to you. It's not fair that I've been testing you without your consent. It's not fair that I've been investigating your life. It's not fair that I've been trying to catch you in some lie that doesn't exist." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. She had known that Julian was damaged. She had known that trust didn't come easily to him. But hearing him articulate the ways he had doubted her, the ways he had been searching for proof that she was lying, it hurt. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because I can't keep doing this," Julian said. He returned to his desk but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against it, his arms crossed. "I can't keep you at a distance because I'm afraid. I can't keep pretending that my feelings aren't." He stopped himself, started again. "That I don't feel things, because I do. I feel everything when I'm around you, and it terrifies me." "Then why tell me at all?" Emma asked. "Why not just continue as things were?" Julian looked at her, and for the first time since she had entered the office, she could see the vulnerability beneath the control. "Because every day that I pretend not to care about you is a day I'm wasting. Every day that I maintain this professional distance is a day I'm lying to you and to myself," he said. "And I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of testing. I'm tired of being afraid." He stepped closer to her. "Love you, Emma," he said. It was the first time he had ever said those words, and they sounded like they were costing him everything. "I love you, and I'm sorry for investigating you, and I'm sorry for testing you, and I'm sorry for being such a disaster of a human being. I'm sorry for all of it." Emma wanted to scream at him. She wanted to tell him that what he had done was unforgivable. She wanted to walk out of his office and never come back. But she could see the fear underneath the confession. She could see that he had spent months preparing to say these words. She could see that he was terrified of her response. "You shouldn't have investigated me," Emma said. It was important that she say this, important that he understand that what he had done was a violation. "What you did was wrong, Julian. You invaded my privacy. You violated my trust. You treated me like a problem to be solved instead of a person deserving of respect. I know, Julian said. And I've destroyed the files. I've paid the investigator to ensure that every copy of everything they found has been deleted. It's done, but I can't undo the fact that it happened. I can only apologize and hope that you can forgive me. Emma looked at the man in front of her. He was standing there, completely exposed, completely vulnerable, completely terrified. He was giving her a choice. She could leave. She could decide that his breach of trust was unforgivable. She could walk away, or she could choose to believe that people could change, that trauma-driven behavior could be recognized and repaired, that love could bridge the gap between broken people. I love you too, she said finally, even though I shouldn't. Even though you're my boss, and that makes this complicated. Even though you investigated me and violated my privacy. I love you, Julian. The real you, not the billionaire, just you. Julian pulled her close, and Emma could feel him shaking. I'm going to mess this up, he said against her hair. I'm going to say something wrong or do something that hurts you because I don't know how to do relationships. I've been alone for so long that I've forgotten how to be with someone. Then we'll figure it out together, Emma said. We'll figure it out as we go. When he pulled back, there were tears on his face. What happens now? He asked. Now, Emma said, we figure it out, together. The relationship between Emma and Julian couldn't be hidden for long, though they tried. For the first week, they maintained professionalism at work. Emma still arrived early and left late. Julian still reviewed her work with meticulous attention. They still referred to each other formally in meetings. But when they were alone, things were different. They would stand close. They would hold hands when no one was looking. They would exist in this strange space between professional and personal. By the second week, the tension was obvious to everyone. Emma's co-workers started making comments. Julian's team noticed the way he looked at her. The boundaries were beginning to blur. Julian called her into his office one evening after everyone had left. We need to talk about the parameters of this relationship, he said. We need to set boundaries that protect both of us. Okay, Emma said, sitting in the chair across from his desk. First, you need to resign as my assistant, Julian said. It's not appropriate for us to continue working together in that capacity. It creates a conflict of interest and puts you in a vulnerable position. Emma's heart sank. She had loved working for Julian. She had loved the work itself. She had loved the purpose it gave her. And more importantly, she had needed the money. If I resign, I lose the job, she said. I can't afford to lose the job, Julian. I know, Julian said. He pulled out a document. That's why I've prepared something. It was a job offer from another company, a smaller firm run by a woman named Victoria, who had been one of Julian's business partners. The salary was slightly higher than what Emma was currently making. The position was executive assistant to the CEO. The hours were more reasonable. The expectations were clearly outlined. She's been looking for the right person for 6 months, Julian said. I told her about you. I sent her some of your work samples without your name attached. She was impressed. She wants you to interview. You did this without asking me. Emma felt anger rise. Yes, Julian said simply. I did, because I couldn't stand the thought of you being in a vulnerable position anymore. I couldn't stand the thought of working with you every day while keeping my distance. I couldn't stand the thought of you resigning without having something else lined up. Emma looked at the job offer. The position sounded good, the company sounded good, and the CEO, Victoria, had a reputation for being fair and kind. What if I don't want to change jobs? Emma asked. What if I like working for you? Then we have a problem, Julian said, because I can't be your boss anymore. I can't maintain that relationship. It's not fair to you. What if I want to make that choice? Emma asked. I'm not asking you to choose, Julian said. I'm removing the choice because the power dynamic is unbalanced, because you need this job to support your children, because I need to protect you from the vulnerability of that imbalance. Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. She understood what he was doing. She understood that it came from a place of care, but it still felt like he was taking control away from her. This is my life, Julian, she said. I need to be able to make decisions about my own life. I know, Julian said. He came around the desk and knelt in front of her. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to create a space where we can have a real relationship without the complications of the power dynamic between us. I'm trying to do the right thing. Emma looked at him. This man who had investigated her, tested her, and now was trying to protect her by removing her from his direct control. If I do this, Emma said slowly, it's because I want to, not because you're telling me to. I know, Julian said, and I respect that. Emma went to the interview with Victoria the next day. She was nervous and prepared and ready to be rejected or to be disappointed. Instead, Victoria immediately grasped Emma's potential. She told Emma that she had been so impressed by her work that she had checked Julian's company directly and found that Emma had been responsible for significant organizational improvements. "You're overqualified for this position," Victoria said, "but I think you'll grow into something more significant here. I think you have the potential to be a strategic partner to me, not just someone managing my schedule." Emma was offered the job on the spot. She accepted it, giving 2 weeks' notice to Julian. Those 2 weeks were strange and beautiful and painful. They were finally able to be openly affectionate at work, knowing that their time working together was ending. Julian held her hand in meetings. He touched her back when she walked past his desk. He looked at her with an openness that he had never shown before. On her last day, he asked her to dinner at the restaurant where they had first really talked. The same restaurant where she had seen him open up about the acquisition with Harmon, where she had tasted the wine he had ordered for her. Over pasta, he pulled a small box from his pocket. "I'm not supposed to do this," he said. "I'm supposed to wait longer. I'm supposed to do everything right and not rush things. But I've never been very good at following the rules, and I'm tired of waiting." He opened the box. Inside was a diamond ring, not ostentatious, but beautiful, classic and elegant. "Emma Peterson," Julian said, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly. "I love you. I love who you are and what you've done to my life. You've made me believe that I can be more than just the sum of my trauma and my wealth. You've made me believe that I deserve happiness. Will you marry me?" Emma had never thought she would get here. She had married once before, when she was young and naive and believed in forever. That marriage had ended in abandonment and heartbreak. She had learned that belief in forever was dangerous, that love was a risk that often didn't pay off. But this was different. Julian was different. They were different together. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Emma's new job was everything she needed and more. Victoria was exactly what she had hoped for in a boss. Demanding but fair, intelligent and kind, willing to push Emma to grow while supporting her as a person. Within 3 months, Emma had expanded the position beyond scheduling and organizing. She took on strategic planning. She helped Victoria analyze their business operations. She contributed to board meetings. She became indispensable not just as an assistant, but as a thought partner and strategist. Julian, in the meantime, was making changes in his own life. He started a philanthropic foundation focused on helping people who had been financially devastated by corporate fraud and corporate manipulation. He poured resources into it, but more importantly, he put himself into it. He read every application. He met with beneficiaries. He listened to their stories. Emma watched him slowly transform from a man defined by his pain into a man defined by his purpose. She watched him use his power and his wealth for good. She watched him heal. 6 months after Emma left the position of Julian's assistant, they moved in together. Julian purchased a house in the suburbs, a beautiful Victorian with a large backyard. It was the house that Emma's daughter had mentioned once in passing, wanting a backyard to play in. He didn't ask permission. He simply had it set up for them to move into. When Emma realized what he had done, she should have been angry at his presumption. Instead, she was touched by the thoughtfulness of it. When her family walked through the front door for the first time, her son ran immediately to the backyard and started playing. Her daughter grabbed Emma's hand and said, "This is the house from your wish, Mum, the one with the backyard." Emma felt tears in her eyes. "You don't have to live here if you don't want to," Julian said carefully. "I know I made assumptions. I know that probably wasn't the right way to do this. We can look for a different place." "No," Emma said, looking at her children playing in the yard, at the home they had somehow found. "This is perfect. Thank you." Julian put his arm around her. "You've given me so much, Emma. Letting me do things like this is how I know how to show my love." Emma understood then that providing was his language, creating was his language, building was his language. It was how he had learned to care when words didn't come easily. They planned a wedding for the following spring, just family and close friends. Emma's mother walked her down the aisle because she wanted to. Julian stood at the altar, and when he saw Emma, his face transformed completely. He looked happy, actually genuinely happy. They wrote their own vows. Emma spoke about finding love in the most unexpected place. She spoke about learning that people could change. She spoke about believing in second chances, even when she had promised herself she would never believe in them again. "I came to work for you because I needed stability," Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. "I came to work for you because I needed to provide for my children. I never expected to find myself. I never expected to find you. But somewhere in the organizing of your calendar and the management of your life, I found the person I was supposed to become." I found someone who sees me, really sees me. I love you, Julian. I love you for your brilliance and your kindness and your willingness to be vulnerable. I love you for becoming the man that you always could have been. Julian spoke about being found when he didn't know he was lost. He spoke about Emma seeing the good in him when he couldn't see it himself. He spoke about the walls he had built and the way she had gently, persistently dismantled them without him even realizing it was happening. I spent years building walls, Julian said, his voice steady but emotional. I spent years protecting myself from being hurt again. And then you came along and somehow, without even trying, you made me want to tear those walls down. You made me believe that being vulnerable could be a strength instead of a weakness. You made me believe that love was worth the risk. I love you, Emma. I love you for exactly who you are. And I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of your love. When the officiant pronounced them married, Julian kissed her with the kind of passion that made everyone in the audience hold their breath. When they pulled apart, they were both crying. Emma stood in the office of the foundation with a cup of coffee, reviewing quarterly reports. She was now the chief operating officer of the Julian Blackwood Foundation, a position she had grown into organically. She worked closely with Julian on strategic decisions, and together they had implemented programs that had helped over 500 families rebuild their lives. Their home was filled with laughter and chaos and the kind of noise that suggested a real family. Emma's children had their own rooms in the Victorian house. They had a dog that Julian had bought without asking Emma, a golden retriever named Hope. They had family dinners most nights, where they talked about their days and their dreams and their lives. Julian had also developed a relationship with Emma's mother. He had brought her into the foundation as a consultant, valuing her lifetime of experience helping people navigate difficult financial situations. Emma's mother adored him. She had told Emma, "I was wrong to judge him based on his money. He's a good man. He takes care of you." Julian appeared in Emma's doorway with a folder. "We have a new application," he said, from a woman who was defrauded by her former employer. Single mother, 2 children. She reminds me of someone. Emma smiled. "Let me see." She read the application carefully, and her heart ached for the woman's story. It wasn't so different from what she had lived through, the desperation, the fear, the need to provide for children while barely keeping her own head above water. "Approve her," Emma said. "Give her everything we can." Julian kissed the top of her head. "I knew you would say that. That's why I brought it to you." "Is that why you brought it to me? To see if I would approve it?" "No," Julian said, sitting on the edge of her desk, "because I trust your judgment more than anyone's, because you understand what it means to build yourself up from nothing, because you're the most capable, brilliant, kind person I know." Emma turned in her chair and pulled him down for a kiss. "I still can't believe I married a billionaire," she said. Julian laughed. "I still can't believe you said yes to someone as damaged as me." "You're not damaged," Emma said. "You were hurt, and you chose to heal. That's not the same thing." "That's what you taught me," Julian said. He pulled her up and held her close. The sun was setting through the office windows, casting golden light across the room. Emma could see the foundation's mission statement on the wall, building futures from financial devastation. She could see the photographs of the families they had helped. She could see the evidence of the impact they had made together. In that moment, Emma felt completely, entirely, undeniably loved, and she knew that Julian felt it too. The reciprocal nature of their love, the way it made them both better, the way it had transformed them both from people defined by their pain into people defined by their purpose. She had come to that job looking for stability, looking to provide for her children. What she had found instead was so much more. She had found home, she had found love, she had found the person she was supposed to become, and somehow, in saving herself, she had saved him too. Later that evening, they left the office together. In the parking garage, Julian stopped and turned to face her. "I have something to tell you," he said. His voice had a nervous quality that Emma had learned to recognize. "What?" she asked. "I've been thinking about our family," Julian said, "and I know we already have 2 wonderful children, but I was wondering if you would want to have a child with me. Our child, a baby that's ours." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. She had never expected that Julian would want biological children. He had always seemed content with the family they had created together. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I want that." Julian pulled her close and kissed her in the middle of the parking garage, not caring who might see them. When they pulled apart, he said, "I love you so much. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that." "You already are," Emma said. "You already are." They drove home through the city, holding hands, listening to music, existing in the comfort of silence and companionship. When they arrived at the house, their children were waiting at the window, having seen the car pull in. They ran out to greet Julian and Emma. "Guess what?" Emma said, lifting her son up and spinning him around. "You're going to be a big brother," her daughter squealed with delight. Julian scooped up both children and swung them around, laughing in a way that Emma had never heard before. A laugh that was completely free of pain, completely filled with joy. This was what love was, Emma thought, not the grand gestures or the expensive gifts. It was this, the quiet moments with the people you loved most in the world, knowing that you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Emma stood in the bedroom of their home, holding her newborn daughter in her arms. The baby was sleeping peacefully, her tiny fingers curled around Emma's pinky. She looked like Julian. She had his dark hair and his sharp features, but she also had Emma's warmth, her openness, her light. Julian stood in the doorway, watching them. His face was soft with a tenderness that had become more pronounced as he learned how to love without fear, how to be vulnerable without armor. "She's beautiful," he said. "She is," Emma agreed. "I can't believe she's ours," Julian said. He came into the room and kissed the baby's forehead gently. "I can't believe this is our life." Emma looked down at their daughter, at this tiny human who was a perfect combination of both of them. "Do you remember the interview?" Emma asked. "Which part?" Julian said. "The part where I investigated you? The part where I was an absolute arse to you? The part where you said you needed someone invisible," Emma said. "Someone you thought couldn't hurt you." "I remember," Julian said. He sat on the edge of the bed. "I was so broken, Emma. I didn't know how to be anything other than afraid." "And now?" Emma asked. "Now I know that the most beautiful things in life are the visible things, the vulnerable things, the real things," Julian said. He reached out and touched their baby's face with his fingertip, so gently that she didn't even stir. "I know that love is worth the risk, that you're worth the risk, that this," he gestured to the three of them, "is worth every bit of pain I experienced to get here." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat together in the quiet of their daughter's nursery, watching her sleep, existing in the peace of a love that had been hard-won but completely, entirely real. And before you go, tell us where you are watching from. If you are in the United States, type US, United Kingdom, type UK, Australia, type AUS, Canada, type Canada, Norway, type Norway, Switzerland, type Switzerland, Denmark, type Denmark. Subscribe and turn on notifications because we have new stories every week and you absolutely do not want to miss what comes next. Thank you for being here. We will see you in the next one.